Bonus share 3. To thine own self be true. I was sitting on the stage of the Hall of Remembrance Sunday morning meeting in Chelsea, London, in June 2009. The speaker at the meeting was an actress. She spoke of identifying with the speaker, an actor, at her first meeting. She talked of the makeup she applies for her role, her struggle to apply the AA slogan, to thine own self be true, and the role-playing of her career. This actor she had identified with at her first meeting had relapsed, and a parallel was drawn between the phrase, to thine own self be true, and the role-playing one does in drinking and acting. When she thought of all the makeup she puts on before going on stage, it sent shivers down her spine. As that same meeting was ending, I raised my hand to share, but the man next to me on the stage raised his hand at the same time and got to speak instead of me. He basically shared what I wanted to share, referring to the theatrical passage in the Big Book, pages 60 through 61, where each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show. After the meeting, I had that empty feeling of not getting to share one's share. To make matters worse, I ended up at Picasso's restaurant, an AA hangout, alone. My friend John, a playwright with 40 years of sobriety, who hadn't been to the meeting, and his wife Nicole walked into the restaurant. They joined me. They sat, and I shared my share with them. John taught me something he had recently learned. The solution is simple. The solution is spiritual. The solution has nothing to do with the problem. We went on to the Kensington High Street Whole Foods and then for a walk in Hyde Park. During our stroll, I told John about my having at one time grown kiwis, and he replied by telling me he grows plays. I thought of the stage and the phrase, to thine own self be true, and that Bernie story from Share 13. Later that day, after walking the Millennium Bridge, while waiting for my riverboat, I noticed I was waiting right in front of Shakespeare's Globe Theatre. There are no coincidences. This quotation, to thine own self be true, Hamlet, Act 1, Scene 3, lines 78-80. This quotation is part of the advice that Polonius, the counselor of state, gives to his son Laertes before the young man returns to France. Quote, "This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man." This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man.